All right. So in the middle of the ceremony, I am first starting to see visions start coming on, and then I enter. I call it like the waiting room, where you are playing, you're echoing, feeling the vibration, but I have this like step back where I'm drumming along with you, I'm beating the floor, whatever I can do at that moment. But I'm like watching myself doing that and kind of just like floating in a way in this like this black room. I don't really know what's going on there. Completely calm, completely centered. And then all of a sudden things start shifting. And I'm in this like it's like this checkered room with just kind of this wavy pattern happening, almost like a checkered flag in a way, and just seeing different changes in colors, not really knowing what's going on. Um, and then it immediately hits me, and it was like, oh, uh, you can't hide from this. Like you're in this thing. And so that was the clarity that I received immediately. Was like, oh, this is all about the heart. This is the first time I experienced something like that, where I was like, there is no like um, illusion or anything. Like this is how it is, type of thing. And then as you begin to eco more and more, I started to like have visions of like being an eagle flying over the mountains, diving in, and then really like each and every time I had a lot of like animal interactions with things as well. So it was one after the other, and completely changing the paradigm of my reality of like what I knew was possible. So it was beautiful, and I immediately knew like I got to do this. I need to discover more of this. So
All right, well, take me through the animals. What animals were you seeing? What was the context of them? What did it look like?
yeah, so the first interaction I had the first night was a jaguar, and it wasn't necessarily vision as much as like a feeling. So I was literally laying on my mat and I was like doing this, like like cats do that, right? I was like slowly like growling to myself a little bit. It felt like a jaguar, and it felt like the ferocity, but also uh, the sensitive nature of it as well. And so the balance between those two, and so that was really amazing. I had like a frog medicine one night, like during and after. We can talk about the after, but I just felt like it was like a wetness, swampiness, and just feeling that on it, kind of everything around it, just like not necessarily drowning out, but like just like a dampening of things, but in a good way, right? The eagle was flying high above now, like free, soaring, kind of seeing the whole landscape of things. So, like again, a lot of it came with like a feeling of like, oh, this vision. I was interpreting it as this is kind of like a metaphor for the feeling of this or something like that. So it's really cool.
Interacted with the animals? Was there any kind of interplay with them or give and take? Was it just the sensation and feeling of the spirit, or did it also include some kind of communication?
So it was mostly like interplay where I felt like I became that, and so I understood it. It wasn't like having a conversation. So I understood like eagleness, frogginess, jaguarness. Of like what? Okay, if I became that in this realm, this is kind of the sensation of that. So a lot of my, let's call it communication or vision, has felt less of this talking and more of like a taking on and a feeling aspect of it.
Take on a feeling, does it teach you something? Do you gain something from it, or is it just a transitory experience?
I usually gain something post ceremony, like the integration time, and I realize, oh, okay, that's kind of what that was telling me. In the moment, it's been more of like an enjoyment of creating a relationship with that being. But it hasn't been, like I said, the conversation learning. It's the after that's come. I think that comes in the future. So
Love that. When I was training, I always felt that way too, that I would have the visionary experience, but there wasn't a lot imparted that I could take away from in it. It was just fascinating and exciting to be a part of. It was real time, it was flow state and happening. And it was only afterwards, sometimes weeks, months and even multi-months after, that I'd feel like I would really take something away from it. What kind of example of that could you give to the listeners?
Yeah. So uh, Jaguar spirit, for instance, like the one takeaway I've gotten from that is, and we've all seen the picture of like the jaguar with the eyes and the jungle type of thing. And so the biggest takeaway I got with that is like to go into your heart. And that is the true essence of the key of everything. And so it's like those eyes are looking through your heart. And for you to have that launching off point to spirit is you have to go within first. It's been a huge lesson for me. Uh, in that aspect, because our natural propensity is to go out when we have it all in here already.
Great lesson. I think the centeredness of the heart is a missing piece to all of this and needs to come into the forefront of what everybody's thinking about, that the entire visionary experience starts from the heart. Can include the mind and can include the imagination, but there's an infinite gateway connected within our heart, and it's a launch point, like you say, into the different realms that we explore in the medicine spaces. Heart is a center of love, center of oneness, center of source, and a universal access point for divinity. It's been taught in multiple traditions around the world for thousands of years, and it seems like propaganda around love and the heart has been something that has greatly diminished our own ability to understand what we are as essential in heart, and that love is just something innate to us.
And only when it comes up here does it become more convoluted oftentimes. That's a heart brain coherence we're working on, right?
Exactly. Tell everybody who you are and what brought you to ayahuasca.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Cromartie. I build let's call them sustainable forests with agroforestry, a lot of different regenerative agriculture and whatnot. Always been attracted to nature. It's just a way to deepen that connection. Honestly, what brought me to ayahuasca is that a series of instances that happened that were kind of like life shifting, and I was like, something has to happen. And as I began in my regenerative agricultural experience, I'd always had ayahuasca in the background, kind of like, yeah, maybe, that seems cool. One day. And as I grew in this more, I was like, this is obviously the next iteration. I feel the connection with my food when I grow it, and the medicine that I have is like, this is just another flavor of that as well, to grow closer to spirit. And so it just seemed like the right moment, and just random, honestly, just randomly, like I was taking a trip to Bali, and my buddy kind of talked me out of it. He's like, but if you want to go do ayahuasca, I might consider it with you. And he ended up backing out. But as soon as he said that, I was like, I've been talking about doing this forever. I was like, let's do this. And so I immediately booked it the day up. Well, I did some research, found you guys. Glad I did. And then immediately did the day up. And the next day, I was driving on the road, and someone stopped in front of me with a car, and they had a blue Morpho butterfly sticker. And that just further reconfirmed. I'm like, okay, that was a right choice. And of course, it was.
Looking online to figure it out, and you hadn't figured out a place yet. You didn't really know us. What was going through your head? What were you trying to suss out, and how did you make your choice of where to go?
Absolutely, yeah. So the biggest thing for me is I know how serious plant medicine is, plant medicine work, and I had read, let's call them horror stories of things that had happened. And so the biggest thing to me is I wanted to make sure that I knew somewhere that had a reputation for being good plant medicine facilitators, and also I knew integration was very very important. And so a lot of places have, and maybe I judge this incorrectly, I know, but a lot of places have a lot of indigenous people that don't speak English. And unfortunately, I don't know Spanish. Um, and so I just kind of sussing everything out. I came across you guys. You guys had awesome reviews. Obviously, I did my research on you as well. I saw you in all the Aubrey Marcus podcasts and whatnot, Check's podcasts, and it just seemed like, this guy, like, he knows our culture, he knows that culture. Obviously, like, everything seemed awesome, and then it seemed like the right choice.
We're grateful that you made that choice, and
Yes.
always to all the supporters that have come to Blue Morpho. Way down, what were you thinking? What was going through your head as you were preparing to come on the retreat?
Yeah, my the weeks leading up to it, you guys had sent the email about kind of a dieta we had to do and whatnot, and so I made a conscious effort to, let's say, cleanse myself of any kind of negative thoughts and things like, because I knew the purging aspect. Now, of course, we hear a lot of stories about what happens, what it is, and what it's not, but I knew that was an important thing. I was like, well, if I can cleanse myself, purge this intentionally, I won't have to deal with this in the ceremony as much. And so that was a huge thing for me. I've always been attracted to like wild nature and whatnot. So coming down, I'd never been to the Amazon before. I was like super stoked, super pumped. And then going into the first night, I think, there's always a little bit of nerves there. You did a great job. I loved the talks beforehand to really lay out kind of the foundation. And so yeah, and then after the first night, I was like, oh, I get it. I get what this is. This is amazing. So
Walk us through that first night. You come up to drink ayahuasca and then just walk us through the whole thing.
yeah, so we come up to drink. You had to start meditating and just be quiet, deep breathing, slow down, turn the fear off. And little by little, just kind of settled into that. And then started feeling a little fuzzy, but nothing too crazy yet. And I liken it to, have you seen the videos where there's like a beaker of water and someone drops like ink in it and it drops and then it like does that? And all of a sudden I just felt that. I just felt this like, and I was like, oh, here it is. It wasn't, it just came on. And then kind of like feeling that spirit of the jaguar came on, and I was sitting there and I was like, I kept telling myself, what is this? What is going on here? This is wild. I was like doing this. I was growling to myself a little bit. And then when you started eco-rowing and kind of building it up, like I flipped over on my mat and I was like banging into the floor with you. And I just wanted to like raise it up more and more. It felt so good and it felt amazing. And it felt like a true connection with spirit at heart with no kind of illusion there. And that to me was the first time I felt that. I felt like my heart just exploded. And I was like, I never felt this much love just pouring in and pouring out of me. I was like, can I live in this forever type of thing, So, yeah, that was awesome.
Incredible experience. What was it like going to where the heart opened up?
It was like a gradual build. And before I knew it, I was just like, it just felt like, it wasn't like a scary thing. It was just like, oh, this is happening. And that's why I would say like that kind of that separation I had where I was in that waiting room and I was seeing this and it was just like pouring out of me. I was like, bring more on, let's go. And of course I didn't understand other people's processes. And I was like making a bunch of noise and being disruptive and trying to say, hey, let's all like join together. Cause I recognized in a moment, like if we join together at the heart, this builds up even more powerfully. But of course I didn't realize people were going through their own processes at the time. That was my own like selfish intention to like build this up more. But that was, and then as soon as, like I said, as soon as that happened, I didn't sleep the first night. Like I just cried, just tears of joy, just all the next day after the second ceremony. I never felt so much love in my life. And I was like, like I said, I need more of this in my life because there's nothing else like it.
Through that first week of ceremonies, did you have healing experiences? Anything that you relate to as, some kind of healing of the past or anything inside you that was unresolved?
Yes. So I grew up in a strict Christian household, and so I had a lot of dogmatic beliefs about being a sinner, not good enough type of thing. And so, like I said, the first night I didn't sleep at all. I was up, I was wired, I was writing, what is going on here? Pure bliss. And so then going into the second ceremony, I was very constipated. I hadn't purged in the ceremony at all. I mean, from like the front or the back, but I was very constipated going into it. And I was just felt just like locked up. And, and going to the second ceremony, I was like, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm super tired. Like I said, constipated, don't feel good. And, so I drank medicine and I got just a fuzzy little bit of it. And then something like a moth, we can talk about that, a lot of moth interactions throughout walking around the lodge and whatnot too, landed on my neck. walked around, and then got to my ear and fluttered off. And as soon as it fluttered off, all sensation went away. And I had nothing for the entire ceremony. And then that night was just like kind of like a release out the bottom, uh, bedtime and whatnot. And that felt like a really like releasing like old traumas and whatnot. And that just felt like a clearing out. And then, of course, we had the day of rest in between. My third ceremony, I was like, I'm an open vessel. Let's go. Let's try.
Amazing. Went through the process. What was the psychological states like?
Yeah, so the psychological states, after I want to say the first or second ceremony, well, actually the first ceremony, I had that picture of like Windows 95 with the OS upgrade. And I just saw the bar going across. Like my brain is working differently now. And then while I was sleeping, or kind of like in that half sleep, half awake state in bed, I was like shaking, and I didn't really know why. But it just felt like a nervous system upgrade with all of that. But I tried, felt into that, and I knew that it felt like I wasn't necessarily nervous. The only thing I was concerned about, I was like, man, if I shake too much, I might get a seizure. But other than that, like everything felt true, and it felt like this is necessary for like a catalyst for growth and for clearing. Because I know you've spoken that like purging is not just out the front deck; it's also like shaking, yawning, crying, things like that. And so that just felt like another version of that, of just clearing that energy out and to allow more in. And prior to coming to Blue Morpho, I had recognized that in my own life. I had negative energies with relationships and whatnot. And I realized that as I cleared those out, more positive energies would come into my life. And so this experience felt like, oh, this is like I don't want to say an expediter, but you know what I mean? Like it's like happening on a much quicker time scale than I realized. But just again, wanted to feel into it and wanted to feel like this was true and not something that was nefarious.
People talk about in ayahuasca having a connection with the ayahuasca itself. The ayahuasca represents as a certain kind of spirit or energy or entity. Did you have any kind of interactions like that?
Not then. I recognized it as it was like a tool, like collaboration. Again, with my regenerative agriculture background, I recognized the plants that I grew as like tools for either helping others grow, for shade, or for nutrition, or for medicine. And so this just felt like a souped up version of that. But I didn't have actually any interaction with the ayahuasca spirit per se. I haven't recently, but not then.
What's that like recently? How did you experience that and how did that turn on for you?
It turned on just through pure intention, calling for it, going into the heart, calling for it, and asking for true medicine, and really using that as a way to understand like vibrational states, especially if I'm doing a ceremony, so vibrational states within myself. And so, a lot of times during ceremony, I'll have certain feelings in my body that almost feel like locked, whether it's like an ache from working out or something like that, or a tight muscle, and like calling on a spirit like ayahuasca and trying to understand what it does in that scenario, um, and to help clear or like channel more energy type of thing. So I call it on and say, okay, let's feel into this. Can I use vibration along with this to help that process along? And so it's just like an ally that I've obviously barely scratched the surface on.
Ayahuasca shows up now. Did it have any kind of gender or any kind of specific energy with it?
Well, interestingly enough, so most of the times when I call on a spirit, it seems to be a lot of times where I'm in a meditative state and all of a sudden I would pick something up and it's like, oh, you're in it. And so it's not like a gradual thing. It's like a jump to like boom, boom, like fast type of thing. And that's what it is. It's like, if you call on this is what you want. All right, here we go. And so that's really, it's like, okay, if you're gonna if you're gonna say it, be about it type thing. And so that's the energy that comes in with like strong, powerful, to where, and this is the paradox we often talk about of like you have to relax more into that instead of like getting caught up into it. And so I'm working with that now to relax into it more and learn that it's an ally here to help you. And you're only hurting yourself if you turn the fear up and get scared.
Walk me through that around this idea of fear and what fear has been like for you in the ceremonies and turning it up and turning it down and how you've been able to work with fear.
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, with sanctuary, I mean, I always joke, and maybe this is wrong, because I always feel like sanctuary is like a cheat code. And as you talk about, traditional shaman was duality, where sanctuary is just like we're here, and we've invoked pure medicine, and we call on all spirits to be a part of that, even disharmonious ones. Like you can achieve harmony here, and so oftentimes in ceremony, when I do see that happening, I feel a tense kind of nature happening in my body, and that tells me, okay, use your breath, relax into it, and it goes away. So I will achieve I will achieve a state where it's like whelming in a way, um, and then I'm like, okay, let's center back down. And so it's like the wave coming up little by little, um, and so as you do it more, you realize like there's nothing to be afraid of. The fear is created in your mind, and so I found that as I've become to know that, as we talked about, know it here versus know it here, it just becomes more innate. And then you're like, what is the fears? We're in sanctuary. I'm like, it's all good. I'm making this up.
Hard for people to believe that they're the ones making up the fear, and
Yeah.
that it's possible to be completely clear and calm in situations where other people would be white knuckled and scary. But ultimately, that was what I came to realize too, is that there's nothing to be scared of in there. And somehow we're scared of our own shadow and scared of the figments of our own imagination, and that we can get comfortable with that. And when we are, we're empowered to be able to spirit in those ceremonies and take care of any of the difficult things we might confront in the visions, and that ultimately it's our calm that is the most important aspect of the experience.
No, I love what you say about how like we've been taught how to turn fear on. We hadn't been taught how to turn it off. And so a lot I have realized that in my own life outside of ceremony, gradually over time, is like how much anxiety and fear we create with everything around us, and recognizing that that's a product of our own thoughts, and we can consciously turn that off and live in equanimity with that.
It was a big unlock for me too. I had realized that our societies were fear-based societies. So I had been enculturated in fear since I was in the womb, and I was born into states of fear. And then all of the use and negativities associated with a whole population being in a state of fear. And it was a huge unlock for me when I realized, one, I didn't need to be in reaction to that. And two, I didn't have to perpetuate the nature of those behaviors. There was an autonomy that I could tap into where I could turn the fear off and be completely present in the exact same situation I was in before when I was in a state of fear, either in a sober state, with people in a social situation, or driving a car down a road, or anywhere I was going through a shopping center. It was irrelevant to me. I could now go through it and just be observing and present and didn't need that fear at all.
I love what you say, the observer. And even I've found in my own life, like whenever if I react to something like a knee jerk reaction, it's not, I, if I can take a step back and realize, why am I doing that? That's something that I can also harmonize within myself that might not have been previously. And I think as we do that more and more, we become more even keel, and just like you said, to just be observant, non-reactive to things.
Your ayahuasca ceremonies, you became a student in the Blue Morpho Academy, and you've been going through the sitter coach training and now into the facilitator training. Walk me through a little bit about what that's been like and what's been some unlocks for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the sitter coach training, it was just establishing a framework for how to be a sitter coach without the use of plant medicine, to hold space for other people, and the sacred nature of doing that as well. That was two huge takeaways for me. And honestly, with doing ceremonies with people where I wasn't taking, to see how powerful that was in itself, just to create the space to invoke sanctuary and whatnot. And then taking it to the next level with the facilitator training has been just a steady stream of taking the lectures that you give us, trying to understand it, going into ceremony, invoking pieces of it, and then realizing like, oh, this is what he means by this and this and this. And so becoming, I think we're so in tune with like, I have to take it in here and I have to remember it versus like storing it in our heart. And so that the process has been taking the stuff that we learn, learning innately so you embody that. And so a lot of those takeaways are, things that I don't believe you forget because they just continue to build upon themselves as long as you keep walking. You don't have
There's
to.
a framework to this. So many people that it's algorithmic, that you can learn this just by following steps like a recipe. But the practice of plant medicine and Amazonian shamanism is really about learning frameworks and applying those frameworks. And what I loved about it when I was studying in my early 20s was that it, right after I'd gotten out of school, where everything had been presented on whiteboards and projectors. All of a sudden I was in a place where there were no whiteboards and projectors. There was just a cup of tea, and you drink the cup of tea, and then the elders started to chant and ikaro and stuff, and you would have to kind of piece it all together. And I thought of it as like real experiential learning, and understood for the first time what apprenticeship was. But in the academy, we've been trying to present a framework for everybody so that we can have a cohesive umbrella about the understanding of how to practice, and then develop in it what I call our art, which is the unique way you want to implement the framework and how you want to express yourself in the presence of the medicine. For you, what has it been like learning your art, especially sitting for yourself and starting to come into expression of your own experience?
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. Just unraveling all of that, really exploring sound and vibration to see what resonates, what doesn't, how I like to do things. I'm I'm not really like over the top like fancy or anything, so I don't have too many pre-ritual ceremonies. It's like let's get down to business and let's do this type thing. But I like to just get into it, and so a lot of it has really been like where I call upon something, and then some sort of the vibration flows through me, and that gets interpreted either by me chanting or drumming or shakoping, whatever. And then trying to, I get hyped up, obviously, wanting to continue, but also knowing that I need to balance, settle down, and give the space time to settle in and see what comes of that so that we can work those active and receptive channels to be present, but also exercise the flow when it needs to be exercised. And so it's really been a lot of learning how, was one of the tenets, right? Learning how to balance correctly, not go too overboard, not go too underboard, and just play in that kind of space like that. And something you just said that I wanted to talk on too is a lot of us have the tendency of like, oh, I just want to learn the song, learn what it's saying, right? And you told us, you were like, yeah, when you first got into it, you were like, oh, I guess I just have to memorize all these songs, which you said would have been the easiest thing to do. But in reality, but in reality, this is the part of our awakening of like learning. Well, if you're going to call on this spirit and this person calls on this spirit, it might be two totally different things. The way it expresses itself. And so it's like, oh, if you open yourself up and you become a conduit for spirit, that's your own unique expression of spirit coming out. And so it's like a beautiful, like opening of a flower, being able to do this with others who are also searching for their own unique selves and the expression of that, their own unique art, and then being able to share that together because I just think the possibilities are limitless.
I agree with that. The possibilities are limitless. Have to memorize things. I remember when I was first down here, I heard, a person chanting for 3 hours, and I thought to memorize chanting of 3 hours was a huge deal. I was like, I can't do that. I can't drink ayahuasca and memorize all these chants and deliver all these chants. And I thought to myself, how long does it take to learn this, even if you just tried that? Little did I know that you actually had to go through a transformational process to get to the point to be able to channel the chants yourself and to be able to present them in a flow state. uh, preconceived ideas of how long education should take, or the notion of an apprenticeship quickly changed to, oh wow, this is going to be a lot longer than I had thought. I mean, I didn't have really a frame of reference, but I thought you could learn it pretty quickly. Didn't really understand why apprenticeships were sometimes much longer, like 5, 10, 15 years. And ultimately now, 20 plus years into it, I realize I'm still learning, I'm still a student of it. uh, Memorizing would have been easy. There was ultimately no memorization, but there were a lot of skills that we would learn along the way, and some of those directly applicable to our normal everyday life, like turning off fear and being more present, being grounded and stable, and learning how to balance energies in our lives, which are all, I think, phenomenal tools. I'm really interested in your relationship to plants, because when I met you, you told me about food forests and converting gardens into really biodiverse space, the kind of whole invent of an idea, a garden to a food forest. Walk me through how you learned about food forests and how the passion started for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's all started with COVID. I've always been very aware of health, eating healthy food, getting outside, being in nature. Always drawn to that, anyways. But when COVID hit and we had shortages in the grocery store, I was like, man, this system is a lot more fragile than we've been led to believe. And I was like, I need to figure something out. So little by little, and I started doing research and realizing that like food in general takes like 1,900 miles to get to your grocery store. And so I was like, that's not sustainable, right? We talk about all that. And so I just started, I was renting out a house at the time. I couldn't put plants in the ground. I just started growing in pots, and it became like a thing. Like a lot of gardeners get into this where you first start and you want this plant, you want that plant. Before you know it, I had like this huge thing going on. And I was like, man, this is getting to be a lot. Plants need to go in the ground. What's the best way I can do this? And I did a ton of, and when I get into something, I get really deep into it. And then I came across Syntropic Agriculture, which, um, to give just a brief, small overview of it, is it's basically like the opposite of entropy. So people call it syntropy. Entropy, the idea that like things over time decay, and syntropy, the idea that things grow in complexity over time. And so if you look at a natural forest system, that's what happens over a long scale time. Our brief human lifespan, we don't really see it as much. But so the idea of syntropy is, can we replicate the natural processes in nature using these principles to speed up food production, speed up growth? And so with the establishment, you're basically mimicking what a forest already does on a faster time frame, because us humans, we have certain needs with like food and whatnot to try to get it. And we're not having to use any sort of like external fertilizers. You certainly don't use any chemicals or anything like that. And so to me, it's really the future of being able to grow food at scale in a holistic manner. We just don't have the machinery for it yet because it is so new. So my long-term dream is to help facilitate that process and just be another one of the people like championing that and showing the proficiency of it.
Look like taking a backyard and turning it into a food forest. In my mind, there was this great nature. Bulldozers came and created suburbia, which seems to me like the greatest overlay of the human mind onto land. It's just purely terraformed. And then this very unnatural form of yard gets created. People put in grass, they make a lawn, and they put in some flowers, and it's, pre-planned and thought out, etc. But it doesn't really produce food. Takes a lot of chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides to keep it going. Needs a lot of irrigation systems and water. The plants aren't always suited to live together in those places. What does it look like coming into space and deciding to put in one of these forests?
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, if the human species was wiped off the planet tomorrow, that grass would slowly become a forest over time. And so a lot of times what would happen is you'd have what's called pioneer species come up, which are the first small bushes, shrubs, trees that take in this space and they serve as kind of the foundation for larger plants that grow underneath. And you have birds dropping stuff. You have seeds in the soil that have just been waiting forever to germinate under the right conditions. And so that would happen naturally. So what we do is we come in is we first establish like what are the species that this person wants? What food do they want? Oftentimes, right? Do they want fruit trees? Do they want veggies? And you establish for that. But you're planting a lot of these species with the idea that, okay, we want to cover the ground as much as possible because the sunlight is used as a carbon sequestration method, as well as pumping sugars into the soil to build the soil microbiology. So the most important thing is how can you capture as much sunlight as possible? How can you cover as much ground as possible as soon as possible while you allow your target stuff to come up? So the idea is you plant everything at once and you have a vision of, okay, in the first year, this is going to look like this. 3 years, it's going to look like this. 5 years, 10 years. And there's certain plants that are only going to be in your system for 6 months to a year. Some only being there 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And you see how it's going to morph over time. Whereas oftentimes what people do in like a monoculture system is they take fruit trees and they just plant them 20 feet apart on rows, right? And it takes a long time for that space to fill. And obviously, it's completely unnatural, would never happen in nature. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to create as much biodiversity as possible and it's not just about food, it's also about attracting life as well. And so you will have pests that come in, but because of the dynamic nature of it, you also have the beneficial insects to balance it out. And so from a like spiritual perspective, it's like, oh, I'm growing with this as well because I'm learning my connection to nature. I'm learning how I can be a partner and ally with these plants to help facilitate further abundance. And so what we do is we basically overplant and then we prune out selectively over time while we fill up the space.
That's incredible. What kind of foods get produced in these kinds of food forests?
You know, whatever you want to produce, man. Anything and everything. So the beautiful thing too about it is because of the nature of understanding. Okay, let me give you this. I think I have a feeling that every plant, its unique expression of like whether it's super tall and skinny or like short and fat is an expression of like how the plant's spirit is as well. And so if you look at like the ayahuasca vine, right? Like it's like this big liana, it's twisting, it's ripping stuff down, right? And so it's like this big, powerful, which is why and then the chacruna, right, is like it's in the shade. It's observant of the forest around it, which is like the light show of it all, right? And so the nice thing about this is that we stagger plants, so we understand like this plant might like dappled shade and light. We can stack it under a bigger fruit tree that likes this, and we can stack it under something else that'll give it a little bit of shade, but also provide beneficial nutrients. We do something called chop and drop, where we hack it and we lay it on the ground, and that's soil to feed the system. So the idea of like a syntropic system is a truly syntropic system does not require any outside input, even mulch. You create your own mulch. And so down here in South Florida, we're fortunate enough that we live in a very tropical climate. And so I can grow all sorts of things. I mean, we've got breadfruit, guanabana, cacao, mango, jackfruit, pineapple, kaimito, and the list goes mamey, the list goes on and on and on. And you can repeat the same thing, but just in different climates because of the hot and cold, different plants will grow. Like we could never grow apples down here, but up north they grow prolifically. And so you just adjust based upon that. And then the beautiful thing as well is like in the grocery store, we're only shown like a select number of fruits and veggies, but there are so many different types that you can grow, some unique iterations from all around the world. Like we can't grow the spinach you see in the grocery store, we can't grow that down here. But we can grow all sorts of other perennial spinaches from like Japan and Tahiti and Suriname, all over the place. And those grow in the environment as well. And so you not only learn about that, but you also learn like what grows locally in your environment, which gives you a further connection to where you live and where you get your food from to help build and catalyze yourself.
Of scale, how big or small can these food forests be? Like, what's the smallest one that you could create?
Well, the beautiful thing is that you can create one as small as you want, honestly, like 2x4 garden bed. You can do the same thing. And actually, what we end up doing is you might say you have 100 acres, right? You have what's called a consortium, which is just like your diverse mix of plant. And that consortium might be 4 feet long, 4 feet, and you just repeat it every 4 feet. And you put different target species in there, so scale is not a problem. You can do it large scale, you can do it small scale. It's just the principles that matter of how you're doing it and understanding the dynamic nature of, like, I use it like living art. So you're pruning, you're allowing stuff to come back up, pruning that back. This is producing, this gets cut down. And it all is like this dynamic nature of like feeding the system while allowing everything else to increase in complexity over time.
The idea that, if you have any small piece of land at all, that you could make it into a maximum food producing place. I think that it's really strange that humans have moved away from producing their own food. When I was first living in the Amazon, I had come from a Western lifestyle where we went to the supermarket, which was a mile or two away from the house, which is where you'd go buy food, etc. Everything's packaged in plastics and stuff. And then I was all of a sudden out living in the forest, and there the local agricultural plot would have between 100 and 200 species of fruit and vegetable producing plants. It would be an quarter acre, half acre, acre of land near somebody's house, right out of the forest. And you would just walk to it and go collect foods and come back. And there would be an incredible variety between fruits and vegetables there. Just thought to myself, like, this is such a natural way to live. And when I met you and we started talking about food forests, it made me think, oh, this is how to replicate that concept. It's not just a tomato garden or a vegetable garden, et cetera. This is a way to get this real diversity of sources and food kinds into our diet, which has also been recognized as something that's really healthy for us. That's really important, that we have maximum species diversity in the kinds of foods that we eat. We see people get really pared down to eating like 5, 10, 15 different things. And it's actually much healthier for us if we can eat 30, 40, 50, 60 different kinds of foods in any given week. I just think it's really important for now, security, especially with all of the disrupt that's going on in the world, and the way systems are changing and things are starting to feel a little more unstable and stuff, that people have this as an opportunity. Thinking about the plant medicine use and those experiences and the food forest, and I wondered, how has ayahuasca and the different plant medicines that you've been working with influenced your understanding of the food forest?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of hit on that a little bit with the spirit of each plant, and recognizing that each plant is an ally. Even a food producer is an ally that goes far, far beyond just eating it. Right? And something that you said a while back really hit me, in that, like, plants have something that we don't, and we have something that plants don't. So when you ingest that plant and you form a relationship with it, you give that plant movement and you give it a voice, and they give you knowledge and healing, right? And so you create that companionship with them. And so, like, if you're drinking tea right there, right, like, that's a certain plant medicine that you're dealing with right there. And so that really opened me up to, like, oh, it's medicine all around us, especially when done in a harmonious manner, especially done in your own climate where you're getting the interaction with. And so it just builds upon itself more to where you recognize that, like, the answers are all there. We just have to observe it. And so a lot of the dynamics of the forest growing and the changing aspects of it in my life have been metaphors for our own spiritual growth as well. So being able to partner, like, how can I translate this to, like, changes in my own life, and recognizing the nature of those shifts.
Earlier, integration being really important to the plant medicine practices. For you, what is integration and how have you started utilizing it in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think integration is the most important thing. If we go into ceremony and don't learn anything from it, then what's the point of it? So the integration in my own life is just again something you told us that I really love is just taking times during the day to be mindful. Um, and it could be a second, it could be 20 minutes meditation, whatever. I have a lot of nature contact myself. That helps a lot with my integration, being quiet and really being present. So, as you know, the integration after big ceremonies could be who knows how long, right? Years and years and years. And so, in my own life, the integration continues daily, especially as I do more and more ceremonies throughout the weeks. And it's just a um, a constant reiterating of the lesson to stay more centered and present, to recognize the love and the beauty and the light that surrounds us all the time, to dissolve this 3D illusion that we're in, and realizing that like we're beautiful light beings, and to connect to higher spirit with that in order to become conduits for that. And I think it's just a gradual unfolding, little by little by little, like you said, transformation.
Beautiful description of integration. You know, for a lot of people out there, I want them to know that integration is about learning. It's about changing your life. It's not just getting back to status quo or normal, but it's recognizing that we're evolutionary in our nature and that we have an ability to update and move on and really learn from stuff. And we don't have to repeat the same patterns from the past, and we don't have to go back into negative, depressed, anxious patterns. And we can learn to turn our fear off, which I think now is a huge part of integration, which is having the experience in ceremony and then recognizing that we can practice it in our normal everyday life. That these ceremonies are cumulative, especially when we have a plant medicine lifestyle, not just a single plant medicine intervention or a retreat, but as we start to create the plant medicine lifestyle, which is regular ceremonies, way to continue our growth and development, that our learning, our implementing, our integration is a also aspect of the lifestyle and really important to why we're doing this and how we make it positive. Through the vine, we have people ask us questions, and I love to share some of those and would love to get your thoughts on them. And one of the questions we got is, what is sanctuary and how do you use it?
Oh man, what is sanctuary? So sanctuary is a framework. I actually, I liken sanctuary to uh, the greatest initial intention. And so that intention creates the framework for understanding the visionary space, but also the nature of our own reality. And so using that framework, we create a orientation, balancing, healing, harmonizing, and grounding in order to navigate our own lives and the visionary space with full clarity and full acceptance of all. And so to me, it feels like the most a very heart centered intention and very true intention of pure medicine in a way that we can use this tool to further bring more coherence and cohesion with higher spirit in ourselves as well.
Beautiful, beautiful answer. I love that as the core intention, the starting point for the ceremony and the experience that represents absolute protection and safety, and it gives us a direction through the entirety of the ceremony. Ceremony sanctuary is a method that allows a continuous balancing and harmonizing so that we create a sanctuary for ourselves no matter the visionary state. And that leads me to the next question, which is, what do you do when things get really intense? When it gets really intense, what do you do to handle that, or how do you navigate that?
Slow down, calm down, use your breath as a tool, re-invoke sanctuary if you lose that orientation. In fact, in one of the ceremonies that you did for us on the mystery school, I ended up watching the recording. I was spinning in my chair like this for I don't even know how long. And I was like, this is getting dizzy, but I was just relaxed into it and finally like, okay, we need to reorient, we need to calm down, slow down, And so Vogue Sanctuary used my breath to just calm and ground and center. And then from there, continue moving forward. And so as you've told us numerous times, like we will get disoriented and fear will come on and whatnot, and that this is a tool for you to find that balance and realize, okay, yeah, this is just, yeah, I'm making this up in my mind, or yeah, I did get disoriented, but it's okay because I can find my way back very easily with this foundation.
That. Next question is, if somebody's sitting on the fence, they're not sure if these plant medicine ceremonies are really right for them, they're kind of going back and forth in their mind, advice would you give them?
Ooh. Uh, my advice, because of course, all my buddies know I do this now. And the first thing I tell them, they're like, "Yeah, I want to go do it. Let's go do it." And I say, "Well, you should sit with yourself and really question like why I want to do this. This is like the paradox of it is that it's super serious, but it's also the most beautiful and can be the most fun experience ever. But you have to take it seriously. This is not like just a little jokey joke thing, like we're here to have fun in the jungle. No. And so the best thing for my own advice and what I did is like to be centered and understand, like, okay, why would you want to do this? Is there something that is you need to have a pure intention behind it? It needs to be a strong intention. And with that, if you feel called to do it, then proceed forward. But don't do it haphazardly because you might sign up for more than you realize.
Really good advice. I think the call is the desire to participate, and you recognize that you're going into a life-changing event. It's okay to have fear, which can make you feel kind of that push and pull and sitting on the fence. And you don't want that fear to dominate you and stop you from having the experience, but you want to listen and make sure that you've found a great place with people that you resonate and vibe with, and that you're ready to deal with that fear and accept this life evolving kind of experience and really get into that. I think then you're set up for success.
Absolutely. And I wanted to add to that in my first tour with you guys, the first night, there's just like a heavy weight in the room. Everybody's scared. They're like, what's going to happen? Especially a lot of us who've never done it before. And then by the third or fourth night, we've gotten over that and we're like, we're here to have fun. Let's make this, let's have a big intergalactic party right now. And so you can see how it shifts going into it. So, like you said, I love to say it's natural to feel the fear, but we learn that we can turn.
Your message for humanity, if you have one.
Oh, man. My message for humanity is that we will do a lot more together than we'll ever do apart. And I think the true nature of us evolving as a species is to come together in truth and honesty for the betterment of each other, recognizing that we're all one.
Beautiful message for humanity. Justin, thank you so much for being on Through the Vine podcast with me. How do people find you? How can they connect with you and learn more about Food Forest and everything you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Everplanted, EVERPLANTED. It's where I'm the most active. I like to post up there. I want to share this stuff with as many people as possible. So I'm active on DMs and text and whatnot too. So I think the more we share, the more we care.
So Justin, thank you so much. It's been an incredible opportunity to get to know you better. And I love seeing your progress in the Academy. And I look forward to many more plant medicine experiences and conversations in the future. So thank you very much. And have a beautiful day.